Hey, what's up everyone? Nate with Free Range American here doing another pro tip. Today's pro tip is what to do when my tourniquet's not working. Before we jump into that, make sure you like and subscribe. Enable notifications, that way you don't miss any of these pro tips. If you've ever had the experience of throwing on a tourniquet and it not working, that's probably the only thing more stressful than having to put on a tourniquet. Or if you ever find yourself in that situation, hopefully it'll be more stressful, but you'll have an answer on what to do about it. I've got a North American Rescue Gen 7 cat, and I've got a TacMed Solutions soft tee that I'll go over with. Obviously, there's other tourniquets out there. These two are probably my favorite, and I'll kind of talk about what we see with these a whole lot. When you go to apply a tourniquet, you would like to think that you did it correctly, and that's fine. But as the saying goes, trust but verify, right? And that's why we're checking things like distal pulses on the lower extremities. We're checking, there's pedal pulses that you can feel in the feet, which is a little bit tricky, but you can do it. Or if you're still seeing large amounts of blood moving, seeing oozing or something that might be maybe something more that I'm just going to monitor. It doesn't make me think that tourniquet's not super effective right off the bat. But that's the kind of stuff that maybe I see that and I'm wondering, did I do this right? And for starters, again, like we said, trust but verify. Assume that you might not have done it right. One of the biggest mistakes that I see often with people putting on tourniquets is this initial bite right here, as I talk about, is always the most important part. This initial bite and getting that down tight, you're laying the whole foundation for how the tourniquet's going to work. If that's loose, really at all, right? And then I go to spin the windlass, like you can feel, I'm just going to spin this windlass again and again, and it's going to get knotted up on itself. I'm going to go and go and go, and it's not going to stop, right? And you'll get more of this knot before you're ever think, okay, and maybe I've stopped here, so you think maybe it's effective. And you try to lock it into place. If that initial bite's not there, if you're spinning the windlass 5, 6, 7, 8 times, you probably don't have it. But that's why it's good in training to figure out how many turns of a windlass you actually need before the distal pulse starts to disappear. Train ahead of time. Don't make it guesswork. When it's not guesswork, then you're making educated decisions as opposed to kind of fishing in the dark. So that's the biggest, most common mistake that I make is people are stressed, they're in a hurry, and they didn't put it on to standard or as tight as it should have been for it to work. The next is I had it secured inside of the tension bar, but this right here is not secure. And it doesn't take usually a ton of jostling for this right here to come undone if this is not secure at the end of the day. There's obviously a lot less tension on it right now, but still, even with a lot of tension, you'd be amazed at how like carrying, dragging, moving, things get bumped, and it's possible. The only thing that I would say that is maybe more important than that, when you notice it's not working, I had a guy at North American Rescue that told me for the way that these inner bands work, once you spin this windlass and this inner band that runs the length of the tourniquet gets twisted, if you're going to reapply it, you need to stretch it out. So I can sit here and I can just pull this out, that way it's stretched back out. If it's not stretched back out, then it's likely twisted or won't lay flat inside of the tourniquet, which is not something that we can see, but is still a problem because that's not circumferential pressure that we want. The next most common one is, okay, so hey, you get that bite super tight and that's awesome. And maybe I do kind of a little half tuck right here. It's not all the way maybe where it should be, just a little half tuck that sits. And then you spin the windlass, you're 2, 3 times, 4, tighten that sucker down, and maybe you didn't do anything with the tail. The tail is Velcro, and it likes to catch things. It grabs onto a bunch of stuff, and in this whole big tail can get caught on a lot of stuff. So when it's working, I should be able to rub a lot of that color out of my hand, and then when I lose my tail, it'll come rushing right back. As soon as that's gone, it might not pop all the way off. It might sit like that, and then it's Velcro, it catches itself, and then now I have no constriction. The tourniquet's not doing anything that I wanted it to set out to do. Show you real quick on cats the way that I like to secure the tail. So again, if I have that all the way cinched down, and then I spin the windlass till it's tight. And then before I cross this over, I take this tail a lot of times. I'll come pull it this way I'll show that one more time. So I bring it over towards the windlass, down and around, and then back towards the way that it came. And then I'll try to secure all of that with the windlass strap right here. Then I've got the whole kind of support network for the windlass to try to keep that in place. One cool point of comparison is that's why the soft T has this pressure indicator right here, this little red triangle, is because when you pull this red triangle, right, boom, I cinch it down and I have the tension, that red triangle disappears, and that's your go criteria for, okay, now I can spin the windlass, because that pressure bar indicator is hidden. If you see that red triangle, then you still need to tighten the tourniquet initially before you start spinning the band. After that would be obstacles. The most common obstacle that we see a lot is barriers and objects and things in pockets, right? We had a medic in my platoon that had a guy that was shot in the arm, and he was trying to put on the tourniquet, and the bleeding wouldn't stop, and come to find out it was because he had an iPod in his shoulder pocket. And that's for an upper extremity, which is a lot less common because a lot of people are accessorizing themselves with chest or shoulder pockets these days. Lower extremities, which is super common because every single one of us generally has a cell phone that we're putting inside of our pockets. A lot of people have knives clipped in, folding knives clipped into their pockets, whatever your EDC may end up being. All of those things, when you go to put on a tourniquet on a lower extremity, is going to disperse that pressure a little bit, and it's not as circumferential as we obviously want it to be, to squeeze all the tissue down in the vessel to get it to completely occlude. A little bit of extra time to make sure that you're removing obstacles and pockets that you see is going to be super helpful. The other one right now is it's wintertime. And so big, bulky clothing, down jackets is specifically the boogeyman that I can think of right now for wintertime. Trying to put a tourniquet on over that type of stuff. It's not that it's necessarily impossible. Maybe you're a super strong person. The feeling that I can equate it to is, when I'm trying to strangle somebody and I'm squeezing super, super tight, but somehow they're not tapping, they're not breathing. The space has not been completely closed. There's a gap, and the bulky clothing makes it super hard to apply all the pressure that I'm trying to force down in the direction that I necessarily need it to get the full occlusion. It might sound counterintuitive. In the heat of the moment, someone's bleeding to death, and I'm saying like, hey, you should probably put on gloves. Like gloves at a time like this? Taking the extra time to remove obstacles out of pockets, to cut away. If you don't do something right the first time, are you going to have the time later to do it right the second time? All right, so hopefully that was helpful. Again, if you ever find yourself in a situation where you've put on a tourniquet and it's not working, check operator error, check for obstacles, make sure that the clothing's not being an obstruction or an obstacle from getting you to achieve what you need. Hopefully that was helpful. Make sure you jump down in the comments and tell me what your favorite tourniquet is.